I see Sean's changed the spelling of his name. That's what happens when you do that at like 3 o'clock in the morning after the party. um, anyway, I'm really interested what you have to hear. Sean doesn't need any introduction since he's been here for a while. We've heard him, an excellent speaker. Really thoughtful. I haven't heard what you had to say on this, and I'm looking forward because I did go on to the, oh dear, it's one of those words, Sean. It's not a blog. YouTube. I went to YouTube to watch the entire talk that Barack gave. So, without any other introduction, Sean.
Good morning again to a wonderful group of friends. You know, I was thinking because you had a tip-off, there was a secret subject that it will have something to do with Barack Obama. I was going to reveal that to you when I got up here, but Dale just gave the whole thing away. She blew it. But it's really interesting to me just to look at this. Look at the information at the bottom of that hymn that we just sang. Music, an African-American spiritual, somewhere between 1750 and 1875. That's wonderful. And it's horrible to think that we are in a society which denies our heritage. And I don't know if you remember an author named Liza Alther, Alther, who gave a talk a while back about a recent book of hers. She's best known for a book called Kinflix, and the most recent book she's exploring her own background, looking for Melungeon roots and origins. And in connection with that, she subscribed to a service which you can, and depending on how many $100 you give, they will give you a broader and broader, the more $100, exploration of your genetic background. And it's very interesting. If you looked at Liza Alther, you would say that all of her ancestors came from Scandinavia, northern Scandinavia. Yet they found out that 47% of her genes originated in the Middle East. And this is something that is in the background of all of us that we just don't know. And my favorite theme I keep returning to, I hope not too often, is that the world is never going to be at peace until we realize that we are all cousins, absolute cousins. What is a cousin? He's a collateral descendant of an ancestor of yours. And he shared the ancestor. Somewhere, it may be 50,000 miles years ago in Kenya or wherever it was, but we are all related, and we have our individual peculiarities, our idiosyncrasies. Just as certainly I know I've got idiosyncrasies. I try to hide a lot of them, but I don't. I don't always succeed. But you know, I was fascinating seeing the difference there is between certain racial groups. Even the word racial is overused. Has interesting reflections that we associate high cholesterol with heart attacks. The interesting thing is that exists in our society here, perhaps. The people are now beginning to question the importance of cholesterol. It's hard for us to believe, but some very statistical based analyses have been presented which show that controlling cholesterol through a statin is effective for 1 out of every 100 people that take it. That the longevity increases by what they call the NNT figure, which they call it for cholesterol, for statins, it's something like 1.1. You have to beware of figures like this that tell you, oh, fewer people get heart attacks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, because cholesterol, I'm talking about something we share all over the world. I'm not going off track, I hope. Cholesterol is regarded as the mortal villain. And so you take statins, and when I read this a few days ago, I was crushed thinking of the years I've been taking them. The measure is the blood level of cholesterol. Well, I just had a blood test last week, and I was told really to think about the fact that my low cholesterol level was 102, and no worry too much about that. And I said, this is ridiculous. Why worry about it? But my high cholesterol, the doctor was amazed, was 71. So, well, that's good news. But the central fact of this whole discussion is that cholesterol levels do not have anything or very little to do with heart attacks. And one of the best examples amongst our cousins in Australia is the fact that they have a very high rate of heart attacks. They have one of the lowest cholesterol rates in the world. Talk about idiosyncrasies. This common vast family that belonged to a theme of mine. When Whitney called me up the other day and she told me that that wonderful person, Pat Jessie, had broken her foot, I did not know that she did it deliberately to...
Oh, you were ratted out. You were ratted out. I'm not saying you did it, but you were not, you got ratted out.
I know. I figured that she had something in mind for me. I thought she was a dear friend. But Whitney called me and wanted to know what would I talk about. And so it got vaguely represented in the program, but the title that I gave her was Resetting the Balance. Resetting the Balance. And what I have to say is related to Barack Obama, very much so. It may not seem so at the moment, but it will be. I'm interested in the fact that things always seem to be out of balance in their lives, in our lives, somehow, somewhere, whether it's the economy or in a friendship that goes sour or it's something that is disturbing the expected pattern of living. And what do you do about it? Well, this is something which, if you used your imagination, may be related to what I'm saying about resetting the balance. The name of this is something I wrote some years ago, 6 years ago. It's called Hidden Secret. Where is that damn box? Ah, there it is. Pulling from the closet, caressing it, feeling the warm grain, a treasure chest, thinking of contents, wetting his lips, wanting to unlock. But where is the key? They put it somewhere, under something. No one would think of it. Well, that's the trouble. Unlocking secrets, never allowed. They won't permit it. Wasting savings. But what's money for if not to spend? Now, he did deserve it. Wasn't it his? All of it hidden, waiting in the box. While they've gone away, must get it out. Mounting vexation. Key still not found. Such treasures within, secrets in wood. Should it be splintered? How else open? But brave their anger. Money's not theirs. Saved up my allowance. Hunger rising to get what's within. Can the lock be picked? Looking now for tools. Oh, This one's likely. The lock's so old-fashioned, picking's easy. Lifting the cover. Aha, inside. Oh, who took it away? The box is just empty. The money's been taken. Damn it to hell. Anticipation dashed to the ground. Family's not trusting. What to do next? Now closing the box, locking it up, annoyed and angry, thinking quickly. Gets labeled from desk, pasting on top and writes, "See porno inside." Well, this, of course, is a fictive attempt by this teenager, I suppose, to redress a balance, to put things back into perspective. There's another approach to resetting the balance that David will be familiar with. It's a poem I just wrote on Friday and read at our writers' meeting Friday night. And the name of it is Ambivalent Abraham. When I'm commanded to believe, does this gratify your ego? When of everything you're master? How can I magnify my Lord unless I'm qualified to do, and there you're equal making me? You gave to me your highest plan for blessed countless progeny, more than all the stars in heaven. I undertook at your command to circumcise myself and sons, a sign to prove our covenant. You didn't care the awful pain, and like a pig, my blood ran forth. It took the longest time to heal. I thought I had your go-ahead, acting commands to fill this earth with whomever I could seduce. Hagar, gorgeous beyond compare. And so I filled my destiny. Sarah gave us her approval. Here I was, at age 100, hoping to live my youth again, raising Phoenix from the ashes. Ishmael became my second, amazing all who knew my age. From that time on, I couldn't stop. Beautiful girls renewed my loins, urged on each time I counted stars, lest you to magnify than me. And then this new one came along, inviting entry, we ancients say, but refusing to pledge herself. No chance then to make her honest. We ancients had no rabbit test, but time itself did tell the tale. First of many secret brothers the chroniclers have never told, along with all their sisters too. A wife to us was made in bed. The act itself was all we had, and never needed something else. You never told me just one mate. We never had our wedding days. Outside wedlock, no child was born. Legitimate was all we knew. The sacrament was in our lives. We lived as well as we could know. But now you say that I have sinned, calling bastards all the later births, since after Hagar no girls would pledge. You changed the plan within the game. That couldn't work without my sperm that needed planting everywhere. Today, you say, will be the end. No more offspring will I produce. You make it sure I will obey. Lord, what haven't you done with me? Since back in that day of torture, you ordered Isaac's life at stake, sending me up to mountaintop and Isaac following on foot, unknowing what's ahead of him, bowing his head beneath my knife with my upraised arm to do it. 1,000 hours I waited there. My shoulder ached with dreadful pain, till with a thunderclap you roared. Then I desist, for you were pleased. At the chopping block now I stand, with this new torture you devised, my offending member on it, a reenactment of that day when I would follow your command, and now you say must do again, to amputate this joyful part with which I did impregnate them. For that I now do sacrifice, and here I wait for thunderclap, circumcision, mere rehearsal, to satisfy what you desire. How at last can I learn to love, when fear is what I've learned to feel? From the earliest day I found you. If I believe you say I'll live, but only suffer if I don't, and in such world, where's room for love? Here I stand on lofty mountain, awaiting your decree on high, with knife above this piece of flesh. To love you is never easy, sometimes not seems to count for much. But what if I can't believe you? Then my reward, remove the knife. And what is there for me to do if I no longer turn to you? That was just, a sort of playful exploration of the imbalance, as it seems to me, that exists between the traditional belief in God and the problems that man has living in this world, and his seeking for something to explain a relationship, if there is anything for us to be related to. And it seems to me that all religions, all biases everywhere are upsetting a natural balance. And what we are striving to do in this world, I hope, is to restore some kind of balance. I'm not sure that Abraham felt, or at least his chroniclers felt, that he had achieved some sort of balance. But when you consider all the distress that has followed his example, I'm not sure much balance was restored. There was just a new set of imbalances that were established. And we live in a world of imbalances, wishing that it were otherwise. Now, I'm sometimes accused of being very elliptical in my talk. I talk around the subject perhaps sometimes. I would like to read to you a part of an essay by Ellis Coase, who's a black columnist for Newsweek. Last Wednesday, Barack Obama finally found himself in a role that he had previously managed to avoid, that of explaining the history and challenges of race to America. It is a potentially treacherous place to be, and that he was there was partly his own fault. Obama could have moved more nimbly, more deftly, and more preemptively to distance himself from the jarring and arguably anti-American remarks of his outspoken former pastor, Jeremiah Wright Jr. But even had Wright not been a factor, it was inevitable that Obama would have been forced to make a major speech on race. He and his campaign always have been defined in part in racial terms. That says more about America than about Obama. He has tried to make the case that his candidacy is more about health care, economic opportunity, and getting out of Iraq than about race. And now we come to what I think is the central point of my even talking here. He cannot escape perceptions and preconceptions based on the color of his skin. It is telling that in our uniquely American taxonomy, I was a little rough, so I went to look that up too. Taxonomy is the science, you may say, of classification. You divide this and say that's class, this class, and so on. He cannot escape perceptions and preconceptions based on the color of his skin. It is telling that in our uniquely American taxonomy, Obama is almost always described as a black man with a white mother and never as a white man with a black father. Wow. When I read that, something went off inside my head. I don't think I will ever forget it. And, in discussion, if we have any discussion, I hope that we can really explore why in hell this has come to pass. It is so illogical. It's so irrational. But, of course, the very center of racial prejudice is irrationality. I have a cousin who died sadly last fall. He and I were more like twins than cousins, very, very close. And many years ago, he lived with his family in Libertyville, Illinois, which is the old residence place for Adlai Stevenson. It's sort of somewhat upper bracket, definitely white suburb. His wife was very much involved, his wife Ann was very much involved in the whole Head Start program. As a matter of fact, she became the executive director of Head Start for the whole state of Illinois. But they always had postured themselves very sincerely on the liberal side of that yellow line in the middle of the road. And they decided they had to put their actions where their mouths were. So somehow or other they made connections, went down into central Chicago, in the black area, and they found a boy, a teenager just entering high school. They brought him into their home in Libertyville for the entire school year, in vacations and summer he went home. For 4 years, this boy from the black ghetto of Chicago went to high school in upper-class, white Libertyville. Well, I think that's putting yourself in line and putting your actions where your mouth is. I really think so. I think it's just astounding. Yet, in spite of that background, he told me some years later, somebody said, "Hey, Steve, you know, I'm thinking about all this. Do you think you're bigoted?" He said, "Of course I'm bigoted. I grew up in a bigoted society." Which is very interesting to me, because in spite of what he did, he recognized that deep inside his corpuscles, inside his marrow, was this penetrated bias that society instills and imbues us all with. And, he and I went on to talk about that from that point of view. And it's interesting that this Ellis Coase says that Barack Obama always really was faced with the prospect of having to give a talk on race, about that imbalance that exists in our society. I received an email from Steve's younger sister, my God, she's over 80, but I think of her as my young cousin. And I look at Fred and I realize that come May 4th, I will have had my 60th birthday 27 years ago. I can't believe it. Look what you got ahead of you. So she wrote me an email. She's very much concerned with public affairs. And she wanted me to say what I thought about Barack's speech. And she said she thought it was very good, but she didn't think it was great. But she wanted to know what I thought about it. And could I tell how is this coming across in Virginia? She lives in Concord, Massachusetts. This is my reply to her. Dear Allison, I'm sorry I'm not equipped to give you the lowdown on Virginia's response to Obama's speech, but I must perhaps approach your minimizing its value and its status. Then again, I don't know what your criteria are for declaring a speech to be great or not great. Lincoln's Gettysburg piece is thought great in the ideas of some because he captured the challenge and the national emotions of the moment. He outlined with marvelous brevity the course that the nation should follow from then on, and his rhetoric set highest standards for all who should follow. But his personal being was not under threat. His place in the public eye, his evaluation by the nation became at stake only long after his words were evaluated. Obama was addressing millions at the very moment he spoke. He was facing up to the underlying profound prejudices that were shaking his nation to the core. Speaking of threats, remember, Lincoln had no Secret Service protectors assigned to save him from assassination. You may recall that Colin Powell, it is said, passed up political advancement because of his wife's fearing a society that at times has turned assassination into a hobby. Does there now exist a juicier target than Obama? His every appearance in public eye is an act of courage, an invitation to personal disaster. You may notice Lincoln's skirting his underlying theme expressed elsewhere, that this nation cannot exist half slave and half free. Just as a brief interruption, if you go through the entire text, which I could recite from memory at the moment, but I won't, he refers to the fact that it's a civil war conducted to validate the idea that all men are created equal. You know, that's as far as he went. But that's as far as he went. You may notice Lincoln skirting his underlying theme expressed elsewhere that this nation cannot exist half slave and half free. He didn't even use those terms in the Gettysburg Address. And as such cannot long endure. That issue was the central issue of his time. So why did he gloss over it on that day? Was it because he felt the post-battle military ambivalence and ambience should take precedence? He believed it was irrelevant, perhaps. Maybe it was, to the painful issue of burying the dead on this great battlefield. Remember, all the thousands of men who were killed July 1st to 3rd earlier that year were not entirely buried when he spoke. It was in November, and the burials were not yet complete while he was going on. The speech is rightly viewed as superb, but did Lincoln plunge forward into an astonishingly personal Armageddon? There are some who suggest an amended ending to his Gettysburg Address. Of the people, by the people, for the people. The amending would replace each "the" with the word "some." Of some people, by some people, for some people. A superb short book, Gettysburg, by the incomparable Gary Wills, written some years ago, is still worth reading. I regret at this time I can no longer recall many details. I think the personal and political convictions at the heart of Obama's candidacy created a much larger challenge than Lincoln faced. And I think Obama did issue a call to our better natures. Just this morning, I saw polling, what a dreadful age we live in, that expressed general approval of his speech. Only some 20% disapproved. What will they do in the voting booth? Obama waded into the very center of our national culture, confronted our greatest demon in his den, and wrestled it to the ground. Obama addressed what no one else has ever had the guts to deal with, and he did it with amazing aplomb. He pulled no punches, and he exercised formidable personal courage by refusing to do the easy, the oh-so-convenient thing, by condemning Reverend Wright and then aligning himself on the other side with the multitudes who ached to hear him do it. As Obama noted, Wright was expressing a long-simmering anger within his community, not to the world. Yes, I'm hostile to his saying it, but his audience was not intended to be the millions on TV who've seen it, shown with rare repetitiveness by people who intend Obama no good. But if Obama chose to throw Reverend Wright under the bus, that would have been expedient. And even when tempted to promote his career by doing this, he did not resort to expedience. Sadly, that does not foretell how people will respond inside voting booths when they retreat into their secret decision-making and impulsively express inner bias that their conscious decision-making is reluctant to reveal, the so-called Bradley effect. I'll explain that if anyone wants to know later. They may totally ignore the enormous personal integrity and courage in that speech. I fear the Reverend Wright may have handed the White House to John McCain. I'm heartsick over this. And if you are as well, I shall pray for a full recovery for us both. A lot of love from here. P.S. I submit that in the maelstrom of a political campaign, he dared to wrestle with the greatest social issue of our history, one which at our founding saw it pronounced that an African-American man had only 3/5 the value of a Caucasian. I'm sure you'll remember that at our very beginnings, population counting, which determined legislative representation, provided that each African American should be counted as only 3/5 of a man. And that grandiose putting down began way back in 1662, when the Virginia's House of Burgesses upended the ancient British social stratification that assigned status to a child according to status of the father. By that time, enough masses had invaded the sleeping quarters of their female slaves as to create a growing number of children who should be assigned the social status of their fathers by tradition. Oh no, no more of that. So in 1662, it was provided that from then on, social status, that is, slave versus free, would be assigned on basis of the mother. And so Virginia was the first American breeding center for mixed-race slaves. I would like the furtive opponents of Obama to put that historical fact in their pipes and smoke it. A footnote to this is that, as some historians say, in mid-19th century, the breeding and selling of slaves to the deeper South became a tangible addition to Virginia's economic assets. Out of such history, long, long before Jim Crow, comes Obama's call for the equality Lincoln proclaimed but never achieved. It is said that patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. So I am prepared to hear those who accuse me saying these things of not being patriotic, to whom I must reply, did you enlist in World War II? I do not recall seeing you in Germany in 1945. Small wonder that even today there are American blacks reluctant to say the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag because of its final words, with liberty and justice for all, to which some blacks would tacitly add only one important word, white. Some, like Obama, say, we've come a long way, baby, and so we have discovered in the candidacy of Barack Obama. The question is, will that be confirmed by electorate putting Obama in the White House? Don't count on it, because the social undercurrents of perception so bravely grappled by Obama are under challenge, and our better natures have not yet been confirmed. This is the world Obama has so touchingly and knowingly addressed. Virginia, this past year, celebrated its 400th year in a big-time way, 1607. Will it, along with the rest of our beloved nation, celebrate another 400th in 2062? Thank you. I can't, from this terrible imbalance that exists, I cannot escape that business, as Ellis Coles refers to, that Obama is always described as a black man with a white mother, and never is a white man with a black father. I cannot stop thinking about that. That is so disturbingly irrational. But it's purposely irrational. It is diabolically purposeful. There's a reason for putting it that way, so you won't forget he's black. You won't make the big mistake of putting things in balance and saying, yeah, his mother was white too. This experience of being cousins, I know I've had family disputes. And sometimes I wonder if in the clan from which I spring, I wonder if it's the world's most dysfunctional one. We all got together every summer. A lot of us got together, a lot of them. So that I know cousins as well as I ever knew my siblings. And they're very dear to me. On the symptoms, man who originated, I heard during an interview, was asked, well, what's the basic premise of the symptoms? And he said, it's family dysfunction. And said, well, what is dysfunction? He said, you know, when you really love somebody one minute, but the next you want to kill them. Well, that frequently happened in my family gatherings that I can recall. But that is one of the characteristics of our vast human family, in which we are all cousins, that we, however I may disagree with him, as I often would with my cousin Teddy, who very sadly was a chronic alcoholic, and when having had a little bit too much of the dew, could express himself in a very hostile way. I consider international affairs, a preemptive invasion of Iraq. That's familial dysfunction. It really is. That's what it comes down to. But if there is any thought that I could leave with you, I would leave that question. Why is Obama always almost described as a black man with a white mother and never as a white man with a black father? Thank you very much.